Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the happy pair. Welcome to Real Welcome to Real Deal. This is Brian Rose, and I am live here at London Real Studios to talk to you today about how to get London back to work and back to school. I've thought long and hard about what I want to talk about today. And look, this doesn't just apply if you live in the greatest city in the world, which is London, but wherever you live. I think we're all facing the same types of problems, and I really want to talk about them today. I want to talk about three major points today. I want to talk about business, I want to talk about transport, and I want to talk about education, because quite honestly, I'm a bit frustrated over the past 6 months to watch the city that I call home, the city that I love, the city that I named my show after, really disintegrate. You know, it's been frustrating to me to watch the boarded up shops, to watch the homelessness increase, to listen to the stories of black cab drivers and retail shop owners and friends of mine that run small and medium-sized businesses in this city struggling barely to make it economically, mentally, and this all has knock-on effects on our health as well. And I don't see anybody providing solutions, let alone our politicians who, in my opinion, aren't doing anything correct. And I want to get out there and talk about these issues. I want to go into the field and really have conversations, which I've been doing this week. I want to bring people into London Real Studios and, quite frankly, come up with some better ideas. I honestly think we can do better than what we're currently doing now, and I really welcome your input. So please help me today and send me your questions. You know, we're live here on all sorts of different social media platforms, but I got questions for you right now, and I want to ask them to you now. What is the single biggest challenge you are currently facing as a business owner in this new reality, this pandemic lockdown reality? And again, you don't just have to be in London. You can be in any city around the world. But what's the biggest challenge you face as a business owner? Second thing I want to ask you is this. What's the biggest challenge you face as a parent? What is the thing that is making your life most difficult? I think that's really important, and that's why I want to talk about education later. And finally, I want to talk about what is the biggest challenge that you have when it comes to transportation, to moving around. Because the essence of commerce, you know, the essence of being human to a certain extent is where we can go and how we get there. And that's a really important part as well. So please type in those right now. I'm going to be going to those questions live here shortly and really giving you my opinions on all that. And today I want to talk very seriously about how to get London back to work and back to school. And I want to talk about that today. It's been super busy here at London Real. As you know, we are constantly putting out incredible conversations here. We've got people in our studio. We've got people coming in live on Zoom and having these live conversations and broadcasting them on our platforms. We've got incredible guests coming up. We've got Jeff Thompson, who was in the studio last week. Really is a national treasure here in Britain. He's an incredible writer. He's a BAFTA award-winning screenwriter. He's got a brand new book out which talks about his whole life growing up in the middle of England in Coventry and about how he went from working on a shop floor to being a bouncer in a club to being an award-winning writer. He's got a movie out this year that he wrote starring Orlando Bloom, great British actor, that's potentially going to get Golden Globe Awards in America, and I was super excited to have Jeff in the studio. We also had Peter Hitchens, the legendary writer who has an incredible column. I think it's one of the most read columns in Britain that's on the Mail on Sunday, and he was here to talk about his thoughts about life, about lockdown. It was amazing. Also had David Martin here, the star of a recent very controversial film, and of course Jay Shetty, who was talking about how to think like a monk. Great having him on there. Next week, we've got Michael Franzese, a noted mob boss, to talk about his story of redemption. And of course, we've got Alex Jones back on the show. So as usual, we're putting out messages. And the good thing about this is it means that I'm in a position where I can have conversations with people that normally maybe you wouldn't be able to talk to. And so I'm going to use our platform of London Real over the next 4 weeks to get out there and speak with business leaders, with first-line responders. I want to speak with healthcare workers, community leaders. I want to speak to parents. I want to speak to people in our governments, people in our cultural institutions, people that are our tourism chiefs, and find out how can we get London back to work. Because I really think It's a quintessential element of us recovering as a group of people, socially, and even when our mental and physical health. We've got to get back to work, and it's never been so clear. To be honest, this has been clear to me since March, which is why we have stayed busy here at London Real. It's also been because we got to get this content to you, which is really important. So look, first I just wanted to talk about, why am I talking about this? Why is some American coming to talk to you about this city of London? You weren't born here. You don't have an accent like the Queen, and that's true, I don't. But this has been my home for the past almost 20 years. I have actually called London my home. This city speaks to me. It has an energy that is so similar to me. If you don't know my background, I'm from San Diego, California. I grew up on the beach. You know, San Diego has one of the greatest climates in the world. People always say, why did you leave there? And I left because London's a better city. It gives me everything I need. It's got incredible culture. It's got incredible history. It's got incredible people. The people of London, I think, are the best in the world. They are hardworking. They are open-minded. They've got a history of always being able to fight and fight back whenever they encounter crisis. Look at the Battle of Britain in 1940. I mean, incredible, the resilience of the people here. And it's something that I've always felt the same about. And so when I've been here over the past 20 years, it's a city that, you know, it's something that always meant a lot to me. I love this city so much. I've lived in so many places around the city. I've engaged with people in almost every single borough of this city in so many different manners, from volunteer work to working in the city of London in the financial district. And for the past 9 years, I've had a show that I named after the city called London Real. And for the past 9 years, we've had nearly 1,000 conversations that we broadcast out for free to the world that have been watched 500 million times in order to get people, to help them get the information to make, you know, giant transformations in their life, mentally, economically, physically. And so, you know, this city means a lot to me. And when I see it really going down the tubes, when I see it disintegrating, when I see irreparable harm happening, you know, it makes me want to stand up and do something about it. And that's why I'm here talking to you today. And that's why you're going to see me posting the videos. A lot of you saw the videos I posted yesterday on Instagram and on YouTube of me having conversations with people in London about how we can get this city back to work and back to school. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm also going to play some of those videos for you as well, so you can watch me having conversations with everybody. You know, I had a bunch of conversations, and I always speak with the taxi drivers in London. We call them black cab drivers because the iconic British taxi is black. So we call them black cab drivers. And, you know, these are the men and women who I think are almost the backbone of London, the bedrock of London. You know, they see everything, they know everything, they talk to people. And that's why I really love talking to these drivers, because they see everything. They can see what the consumer habits are. They can see what's going on with the traffic and the transportation. They really have their fingers on the pulse of this city, and that's why I really like talking to them a lot. And so, look, this is why I'm here to talk about London. This is my city. It's my favorite city. It's the place I chose to live. It's the country I have citizenship in. My children will grow up here, and I plan on dying in this city. And so that's why I want to talk about it today, because I'm so passionate about its welfare and its future. So let's jump in and talk about one of the 3 things I want to talk about today. Again, if you're following me, please put these questions in the chats here below. What is the single biggest challenge you face as a business owner? What's the single biggest challenge you face when it comes to transportation? And what's the single biggest challenge you face as a parent? That's what I want to know. And again, it applies to any city, because I think all of the ideas that we're going to come up with here together are going to apply to cities around the world. Also, I'm looking to other cities to bring those ideas into London so we can take London to be the next level. And again, this is the greatest city in the world, and we need to start acting like the greatest city in the world and show people that we are on the forefront when it comes to solving these problems, whether it's around COVID, around economic depressions and recessions, around our mental health, around our physical health, around our parenting, and around our schooling. I want to lead the world with the solutions. And we've got the brain power here. We've got the resources. We've got an incredible economy, incredible group of people that live here in London. Both people born in Britain and people that have immigrated here, like me. And it's a great resource. We just need great leadership, great information, and great execution. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, get London back to work. And a lot of people have said, Brian, like, why are you so fixated on work? There's a lot of other things we need to improve in this city. And while that's true, I do recognize that the only reason we're in London is because it is a great economic center. It's the only reason this is even on the map. It's the only reason the Romans came here thousands of years ago, because this is a mecca of commerce. It's where people come to originally trade. And that led to also innovate and create great ideas and great educational institutions and great culture. But it starts off really as trade. And so I think it's always good to go back to basics, because if there's no economics in this city, there is no city. And we've seen cities, where I'm from in the West, we have these things called ghost towns. They used to be a mining town, and there's no more mines, so there's no one there because there was no economic reason. So that's why I'm focusing on getting back to work. Also, I come from a business background. I studied business at the Sloan School of Finance at MIT. I went on to work on Wall Street and in the City of London, and I run a business as an entrepreneur for the past 9 years. And I know that business is what also brings everything else to it. When people can be there and be prospering, everything else comes as well. And I know if we can get London back to work, everything else will fall in line, and that's what I want to talk about today. So first, what I like to do, again, I went to MIT. I'm a mechanical engineer by definition, so I love numbers. I really like the science, and I like data-driven assumptions, hypotheses, and methodologies. So I wanted to start by showing you this graph. And again, it might look complicated at first, but it's actually quite not. But this is data based on a lot of sources that are coming from Google and a lot of other places that's talking about economic activity in certain sectors. And again, we got these from Google Mobility, also from things like OpenTable for restaurants, public Wi-Fi. This is pretty good information that we got. And there's really 4 areas of this graph I want to talk about. And this is really the consumer activity in these sectors. So if you look back here on March 2nd, we kind of have this pre-COVID lockdown reality. And as you might expect, everything is kind of at 100% business as usual. We're all going out to the groceries and pharmacies as normal. We're actually going to retail and recreation as normal. We're going into restaurants and our social venues as normal. Now the lockdown hits, and we can see a massive drop in almost all of the activity here. And the big one you see right away is the restaurant bookings literally go down to 0 right around March 16th, March 20-something, when we had the lockdown. And it was like, you are not allowed to go out and eat. And we saw that go down to literally 0%. At the same time, you saw social venues, because of the social distancing and lockdown as well, almost go to near 0. Now this discrepancy here could mean something that was qualified as a social venue, but it's basically down to 0 as well. You also see the retail and recreation drop very low. It doesn't go to 0 because, as we know, we were still allowed to go to pharmacies to get our medications and anything we thought we would need. But again, very, very low. Grocery and pharmacy, actually, that's where those are, stayed still because people were still going to groceries. They were ordering online. They were getting the medications that we needed. So you can see how this all makes sense, right? This all dropped down. And we can see as some workers return in May 15th and schools opened to a certain extent in May and the shops started opening, we saw these graphs coming back. But if you go all the way over here to the left, you realize that some of these things have not gone back to 100%. In fact, nothing's gone back to 100%, but some are getting closer, with the groceries and the pharmacies getting the closer. My wife now really enjoys going back and shopping, and that's been able to be done. But a lot of things are not getting back to where we need them. Social venues, still below 50%. Restaurant bookings, still around 50%, which means half the GDP of this city is not happening in those sectors, which means all of the workers there are not making money, which means they're not spending money, and it pulls down the entire GDP and economics of a city in a massive, massive way. And so this is important to see this data. And again, I'm a data-driven person, and that's why I want to make my assumptions and my conclusions. This just shows us where we're at. And if we don't find a way to get London back to work, these are never going to get back to up to 100. And that's what we need if we want this place to thrive, not to mention just economically, but also culturally. So I want to show you a next slide, which is another really important indication. And this is how people feel about returning to these venues. Is this something they would rather do more than before lockdown or less than lockdown? And again, this might not be a surprise, but it's a great thing to kind of just fact check what's going on here. First of all, we see people that would want to go to restaurants, before COVID. They're saying, I want to go more than before COVID. 5% of the people, 55% of the people saying they want to go less after this. So a lot of people are very hesitant to go out to these venues like restaurants. Same to large events. Even higher percentage are frightened. 55% don't want to go out to see large events. Non-essential shops, again, for the things that you don't have to go get, still a high level of fear. 45% of the people would rather not go to these shops compared to before. And we see it, sports facilities, visiting families and friends, using public transport. Look at that. Almost 60% of the people are scared to use public transport. Another massive problem, which what I want to talk about in the second point here. And then finally, visiting the cultural centers. I'll spin around here. Again, museums, etc. I took my son to the Science Museum this Sunday. Nobody there. There was just no one there. And no one's visiting these cultural centers, which means, again, no employment there. And they're not actually used to, or they're not prepared for what potentially happens if we have tourists. So again, more indications with real data that people are super hesitant to go there. And that's because the campaign of fear really was overdone. And I want to get to this point a little bit more. Let me show you one more graph that I think is really relevant here. And this talks about the rates of growth by quarter of various countries from around the world. And I think it's really important to put this in perspective and compare the UK to other G7 countries. So again, here you have the UK, and just to give you an idea, the blue is the first quarter, which was basically kind of pre-COVID. Okay, the last bit of it, there was a bit of a concern and lockdown. The red is the second quarter, and of course the green is the combination of two, the half. So as you would expect with most major economies, and I've got the UK, France, Germany, Spain, USA, and we put in China as well, you know, pre-COVID, or as it started to happening, we saw kind of a small, drop in some of the growth here. But of course, in the second quarter, we saw massive drops. And again, you see the UK really topping out the chart almost at a 20% drop in the GDP in the second quarter. I mean, that's massive. We saw a little bit less so in France, a little bit less so in Germany, Spain, a little bit less, but still the same. The US hasn't dropped as much. And you see with China, they almost recovered in the second quarter because they were managed to squash that in the very beginning to where they really didn't have that knock on. So it shows that it didn't happen everywhere around the globe. But the most important thing I want you to look at here is the fact that Germany is now only experiencing in the second quarter, say, just above a 10% drop in GDP, whereas the UK is at 20%. Some of these countries like Germany and France are finding ways to get back to growth. They're finding ways to get people back to work. And what they're doing better than we're doing is they're getting people back into the cities and back into the offices, because this is the key to economic growth. And I think there was a study we saw recently that said 2/3 of the workers have returned to the offices in the cities of Germany, whereas in London, it's more like 1/3 or less. And I think this is one of the biggest problems that we're having here, and it's going to have massive effects. And the problem with graphs like this is that some of these businesses are dying. These small and medium-sized businesses are going bankrupt, and they will never return again. And if you walk around London or walk around the cities you're in, you see these boarded up stores. Those stores are not coming back. They're not taking a break because they don't have the capital reserves to wait it out. And so we are seeing so much innovation, so much capital being destroyed. And let's be clear, it's 99% of the London economy and the employment in London is from small and medium-sized businesses. It's that high. And for us to not realize that, it's really important. The multinational companies, the ones on the S&P 500 index and the FTSE 100, they might survive, but that's not the lifeblood of our city, and that's not where most of our employment comes from. And I actually went out in the field yesterday and have a conversation with a gentleman I know named James Dawson, who owns something called the Humble Grape. He set this company up about 10 years ago because he loved wine. And it ended up turning from a wine tasting event company into actually a wine bar business with 5 locations around the city, from places like Canary Wharf, where a financial district is, to places like Battersea and places like Clapham, where there's some real economic activity. And so I actually went out and spoke to James at his wine bar, and I talked a little bit about how we can get Londoners back to work. And here's a short piece of my conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stat that I saw was 42% of the income in London comes from the workers of London, and a lot of them aren't here, and these businesses are dying. And it's something nobody talks about is the irreparable economic damage being done. You know, we were talking earlier, every single day this goes on, businesses are going out of business forever, and they're never going to come back. And these are these big holes in the economy that are going to affect everybody.
Yeah.
And when the business isn't there, then all the ancillary people they employ aren't there. And this is something that just doesn't seem to be very well thought out. And our leadership isn't saying, hey, let's get this city bustling again. It all seems to be the latest fear monger. And I understand we need to trust the science and be safe, but also, the economic damage is really significant. And you're feeling this too.
Yeah, we're feeling this. I mean, we used to be open here Monday to Friday, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and now we open Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday evening only.
Wow.
Our revenue is 80% less than it was pre-COVID. It's a big building and has a lot of staff. We're on 4 staff now. We were on 16 before, and sometimes we go up to 20 at Christmas time. We mustn't forget that one of the things that's really exciting and interesting about London and the UK is that huge amount of employment is by small businesses, between 0 and 50 employees. It's a huge chunk, and those businesses are not able to, survive 6-12 months with massively reduced cash flows. They are the engine of growth in the UK, and we need to find ways to help them and encourage people back to work, encourage people to be spending and to come back.
And so again, I think it's really important to get out and actually speak with the entrepreneurs out there and get their thoughts. And I had a really long conversation with James. I put it on YouTube yesterday, about 20 minutes long. We talked about everything from furlough to government regulations to ideas about actually getting workers back into the city. And that's what's really important. I'm getting some great questions from everyone out here. A lot of people are saying, there's Mayada on Instagram saying the government wants to make life for small business owners as hard as possible. All I know is that it is having that effect. The problem is that the small and medium-sized business owners who don't have a lot of capital, who don't have the reserves, who don't have access to the public equity markets are really getting squeezed now. And we forget how much they are the lifeblood of the city, and it's important to really look out for them because they're the ones that employ the people that are our friends and family. And so it's really crucial here. Also, somebody said it's time to start holding our governments more accountable. And that's true. I was really slow to start talking about this because we're usually broadcasting the messages that we like to put out to you to really get you to change your lives. But it's time to really talk about how to get London back to work. And then that's what I want to talk about now. And so, one of the things that I think that we need to talk about, the real problems here, is there are 3 things. The first problem is that the government overdid the campaign of fear, and it was a disproportionate response. We scared everyone so much that now you can't get people back to work, back in the city, back to using public transportation, back into the schools. And so what I really want is I want to introduce science-based decision-making back into the process. And that's the problem. There isn't any science right now. There's a horrible lack of leadership from our government. There's a lack of communication, and there's inconsistent messaging from our government. We see it from the mayor of London. We see it from other people as well. We just don't see a consistent message here, and we don't see the science that's actually there to tell us what we can and cannot do when it comes to our transport, when it comes to how we communicate, when it comes to our business practices. And that's the biggest change that we need. So that's the fundamental bedrock. But more importantly, we need the workers back in the city. Now, I spent 9 years working in what we call the City of London. If you're not familiar with this, this is kind of the area that is Wall Street. It's the financial district. It's the square mile of London. And it is a major income engine for not only London, but for the UK. It probably is responsible for probably between 5 and 10% of the entire economy. It's very high. And so I believe that those are the workers that we need to get back into this city. Unfortunately, most of Canary Wharf and the place around Bank and Bank of England, most of those global companies have told their workers to stay home until June. And I think that that is a really bad idea. And so this is my suggestion that I have to make is this. We get and we speak to the top 25 global banks and law firms, and we ask them, what's it going to take to get back to 50% capacity by the end of the month of September? What's it going to take to bring your workers back into the City of London? And again, this is talking about hundreds of thousands of people that are going to come here. They're going to go out to restaurants. They're going to buy food during the day. They're going to go out to activities at night and bars and clubs, potentially open up cultural institutions. They're going to buy cars. They're going to buy clothes. I cannot emphasize how important this is from a revenue standpoint and a growth standpoint. Now, I realize anybody compromised because of their health, anybody that can't come in because of any type of other conditions they have or any parenting issues, I know. But I'd like to have these conversations with these institutions. And actually, this isn't unprecedented. The Wall Street Journal reported yesterday in an article that JP Morgan in New York City has asked their staff to come back by September 21st. And here's a copy of that article. They've asked for their entire sales and trading staff, which is where I used to work when I was in New York City, to come back to work for two reasons. First of all, they realize that remote work, it's not certain that actually the most effective work. And second of all, they realize that it's an important engine for the economy. And so there is a precedent for this happening, and it's happening right now in New York City in the next, I think, that's the next 2 weeks. And so I'd like to take the lead of what JP Morgan is doing in New York City and really sit down with these companies here in London and say, what's it going to take to get your employees back to work? And really listen to what they have to say. And I'm really open-minded. Maybe it means that for anybody willing to come into the location of London, maybe there is a income tax break. Maybe there's a moratorium on their income tax by 5% for the rest of the year. Maybe it means they're getting vouchers to go out and spend. But whatever it's going to take, I think we really need to get these people back in here to kickstart this city because it is the engine. And I want to finish on a video of me talking about some of these concepts, again, with my friend James. Both of us used to work in the city, so we know what these workers can do. We know the kind of incomes they have, and we know that them not spending here in London is dragging this economy down. I was in a black taxi yesterday, and we had the same conversation. He said, look, I'm not even going into the city of London anymore. There's no one there, and it's had a major dent on my income. So here's another clip of a video of me speaking with James about this very concept.
We both used to work in the city of London, and it seems to me the big elephant in the room is all these international banks and consultancy firms that are just telling their workers, you know, you got till March or June of next year to work from home. Yeah. It seems like a big mistake, and it seems like if there was real leadership here in the city, they could go speak with these firms and say, what's it going to take, you know, to safely get 50% of your workers back? You know, what's it going to take? Is there a tax incentive? Is there a way we can incentivize you as a company? What can we do to have these conversations? Because that's where you're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50,000 workers coming back. That's going to move the needle on a lot of your businesses around here. Yeah. And it's a big chunk of GDP for the city. It is. And these people spend money, right?
They do.
So that's a potential idea.
That's a great idea, but I think it probably needs to go, but you know, both on the side of incentivizing companies and also making people feel safer. And we need to stop the whole campaign of fear. That needs to stop, and we need to, as I said before, look at the risks, look at the data, and like evaluate that honestly.
Yeah. No, I agree. What we need is a real scientific study and to compare these metrics to other metrics in an unemotional way, and then tell people what is the real risk. I mean, I spoke to someone the other day on London Real that said, if you look at the people under 50, there was more deaths commuting than there would have been from, say, COVID. And again, I'm not trying to downplay, you know, that some people have died from this and the severity potentially of certain people with this disease. But if you look at it statistically, a lot of times it's more dangerous doing other things like riding a bike to work. Yeah. So, but we're making massive decisions that affect people's economic interests, which lead to economic health, mental health, physical health, and just not being talked about while this city slowly rots from the inside. Yeah. And it seems like people realize it months late. Oh yeah, we got to get London back to work. It's like, you and I have been talking about this for 4 or 5 months. Yeah. So.
And so again, just want to be clear about that. I want to speak to the 25 top global finance and law firms here in London and ask them, what will it take to get 50% of your workers back by September? That's it. I want to have an honest conversation about it, and I want to talk about the economics around it and the health implications. Of course, I don't want it to endanger anyone's health, but I really think that it would be better for their business. It will also get London back to work, and all of the ancillary benefits of them spending is what's going to kickstart this economy. And the only way to do it is to actually start making that happen. Every day that goes by when this city is struggling like that, businesses are going bankrupt, and they will never return, and this capital will never come back, and it's very crucial to act now. So great comments coming in. I really appreciate you. If you're here watching now or even afterwards, leave me a comment below and tell me, what's the single biggest challenge you're currently facing as a business owner? What's the single biggest challenge you're currently facing when it comes to your transport issues, how you get around your city? And finally, what's the single biggest challenge you currently face as a parent? That's what I really want to hear from you today. Some great comments coming in here. We've got Alina that says her husband is a black cabbie and his work has more than halved since lockdown. And I was speaking with a taxi driver yesterday who I'll play a video of shortly. And these are the quintessential small business owners. That's exactly what they do. They run a small business. Some of them actually have multiple taxis that they hire out to other drivers, and they see everything. They know everything. They have everything in perspective. They can see the roadworks. They can see who's in their taxi, how often they're in there, what are they talking about, what are they judging. So first of all, I always take black taxis. Sorry, Uber, you've been boycotted lately. And I always talk to them about what's going on in this economy. They always give me feedback. And almost always they're London Real fans as well. They usually watch a lot of our stuff too. So sending love out to all of you men and women in the black cab industry. Again, it really is the backbone and the bedrock of this incredible city. And Elena, I feel you, and I think that's a great barometer. We need to get these cabbies back up to 100% of the revenue that they were making this time last year. And until that stops, we have to keep working until it happens. Victor also said we need to convince people it's safe to return. Again, I want a science-based approach on how we return to London. There's no science in everything I see. I listen to the mayor, I get one example. I listen to another political official, I get something else, and none of it's based in science. I am a scientist by training. I will listen to proper science, and that's why I want to see that basing our decisions, as opposed to someone throwing one thing out one day and another thing out the other day. It doesn't make any sense, and I want to get back to that. Malcolm on Instagram says the government seems to have thrown facts and science out the window. I completely agree. They are making policy decisions based on a variety of factors, some of which we're privy to, some of which we're not. Sometimes it's a political-based decision. Sometimes it's based on social response. It's really confusing, and it's also not helpful. One of the biggest opponents of business is uncertainty. That's the first thing a business owner will say. If you give me an uncertain future, it means I can't invest in my business. And that's exactly what we're getting from the government right now. It's absolutely unacceptable. And finally, Heather from YouTube says, we need a new mayor of London. This one has not got the right mentality. And look, I couldn't agree with you more. There's no leadership there. There's no science-based approach. And the current mayor of London has no background as a business leader, probably has never run a business in his life. And the only way that he sees to solve a problem is to tax you and throw money at the problem. And that just doesn't work. You've got to get the businesses back to work. Again, London as a city was founded as an economic engine. That gives it its power. That makes it world class. And that's what we need to get back to right away. So let me talk about my second point I want to talk about, and that is transportation. And this is a picture of a lot of people using transportation, but this isn't what it looks like on a tube platform here in London on a regular basis, or probably not on a New York City subway platform or anywhere else where you are in the world where there is public transport. It's about this with about 1/10 of the people, because people are frightened to get back to London transport. That's the biggest problem. People are scared to go back, again, because the campaign of fear was overdone. There was a disproportionate response to what should happen to the actual danger. There's no science when it comes to making the decisions of people going on the tubes, and that's a real problem. And there's also a complete lack of leadership and a lack of communication when it comes down to it. And so I think it's really important to actually show you what's actually happening with transportation. So again, let's go back to the numbers. I'm a scientist and an engineer by trade. The numbers always give you the answer. And that's the problem with politics today. They don't stick to the numbers. It's all about opinions and posturing and criticism. I don't believe that's the way to go into politics. I believe in a data-based approach. And so again, back to my graphs again, where we're at 100% here in March, where everything is as you would expect. And again, these are some great sources, again, from Google to Apple to Citymapper to even the TfL bus and the tube schedules to tell us what people are doing. And we've got 5 different ways here. And again, we see everything at around 100% with a bit of fluctuation in March. And then we see the lockdowns happening. So again, right around here is where we had social distancing measures. Schools, pubs are in lockdown here. Self-isolation right before that. And then we see everything drop to just really dangerous proportions here. And again, this is really the public transport usage. So down here, according to the TfL tube, this is down here between 2 and 3% of when that was being used. Now, I know this is true because I was on the tube pretty much every day through this entire crisis. I was on the tube. And I was taking pictures. A lot of you saw me post them on Instagram, and I was the only person on the tube. So I can agree and confer that these numbers are right. And we started to see them slowly coming back as some workers were returning, as the schools were opening. But again, it was pretty much past the calendar year. And some of the houses opening. But if you look at these numbers, they're still very, very, very low. Dangerously low compared to what we saw bouncing back in some of the grocery and pharmacy sectors, in some of the retail sectors. And we're getting back up to here where the tube is now, even this week, being reported as somewhere around 40% usage on the tube. 40% usage on the tube. That is not enough to sustain the economy of a city. Again, the backbone of a city is its transport infrastructure. Look at cities like New York City. Look at London, the oldest underground system in the world. It needs to be working and it needs to be full, or there's no way we're ever going to solve this problem of the economic issue. And so this shows me massive alarm. And until we can get this public transport back up to 60, 70, 80, 90%, there's probably no way we're ever going to save this city when it comes to an economic perspective. And this is something that I really need to stress. And unfortunately, we're getting mixed messages from our governments about what to do. On one hand, I see the mayor disinfecting his hands when he goes into a subway station. I don't see him riding alongside fellow passengers to show them that we can travel safe in groups. That's what we need to do. I don't see that message happening. I don't see the leadership. Again, the campaign of fear went too far, and there's no science-based decision-making happening right now, and there's no leadership. And that's the problem. So people just have fear. But it goes even further than that. It's not just the tube, it's what's actually happening on our city streets. And I spoke with a cab driver yesterday, and I asked him, I said, what are you happening, what's experiencing as far as revenues? And he said something similar to what the comments said earlier. He's like, I'm down 50% on what I was before. And he said, let me tell you something. He said, 6 months ago, I asked someone in my cab and they said I would do 5 meetings a day. He said, now I can only make 2 meetings a day because the roads are paralyzed. They are blocked down because of these supposed COVID-19 social distancing measures. And you've all seen it here in London, and I don't know if other cities around the world are doing it, but they've taken our sidewalks, which no one's using because no one's coming into London, and they've extended them into the streets to give people more room to apparently social distance when they walk past each other, which they're not doing. And this has actually caused massive congestion in the city, which means people aren't even able to get around in the city, which means retail suffers, anybody trying to spend money is not able to spend it, business suffers, and this is a massive problem. And this is a short clip of a video of me yesterday speaking with a taxi driver here in London, and him explaining the frustration that he's found with this massive congestion happening because of these social distancing traffic measures that are not based in any type of science, that are not based on any type of thought. And here's a clip of me speaking with him.
All right, I'm in the back of a black cab here, and I'm just asking this driver, what's your name?
Steve.
Steve. I'm asking Steve why there's so much congestion in London and why it's a struggle for him to get his revenues back to what they were last year. And we're looking at these social distancing pieces. So they're trying to extend the sidewalks to give more people to walk, but there's nobody on the sidewalks, and that makes your job harder to do. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that means they're closing streets down?
Yeah, closing the streets down. There's like the flower pots as well, where they block the streets off in little areas that they're trying to make them like the COVID secure. They're putting flower pots in roads, so even if a fire engine had to get down that road down there, they've got to go on one more round trip to come back out the other side.
Right. So it's like someone had a policy idea, they went and did it, but they're not watching it or seeing if it's practical, and it's actually hurting business and hurting transport, which hurts the economy more. Wow. What would you do right now if you could just jump in the mayor's office and make some changes? How would you do it to get more Londoners back to work?
They don't come back in the offices. They're not to come back in the offices at the moment. I've not seen one interview of the mayor of London asking people to come back to work.
Yeah.
He's just blaming it's always someone else's fault. He needs to entice people back to work.
Yeah.
Get the place going again. Get the cafes going.
Exactly. That's all I see Sadiq doing. He always seems to complain about something that, Boris isn't doing.
It's always someone else's fault.
It's always someone else's fault. But where is he on the front line saying, hey, let's get London back to work. Let's encourage these businesses in the city to get workers back here. It always just seems he's, sanitizing his hands and telling you not to do something. It's frustrating, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. All he wants to do is to go to cut a bit of ribbon somewhere. He don't want to be
Yeah.
And the mayor, he's got to roll his sleeves up and get involved.
Yeah.
And
No.
things, and he doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, we need some leadership. And I mean, look, you have more business experience than he does. It's true, though. I mean, you've run a business. You understand, what it takes to do that. But he hasn't run a business. For him, it's just, let's throw some money at the problem. Let's do a regulation. Let's ask for more handouts. But unless this city gets work, everybody loses, right?
Yeah, but that's just going to be an ongoing circle, sir. He's going to come back to government in October and ask for more money for the chief because no one's back to work. Then what happens in January? Does he do it again? Just keep going, just keep pouring and pouring and pouring, and not solving the problems, just pushing it down the road.
Yeah.
And I always find that those cab drivers have a wealth of knowledge. And again, if he is frustrated just trying to get people from point to point in London, think of all the ancillary economic ramifications of that. So if I can't actually move around, how can I spend money? How can I have meetings that lead to better commerce? This is a really important point. So we are basically being completely stifled by our transportation network and setup because the government is refusing to act. They are not giving us science-based reasons of what to do one thing or the other. They're giving us mixed messages, and this is all because they overdid the campaign of fear. And the other problem is there's no leadership. The mayor of London is not asking his staff to come back into the city. He's not out there actually leading from the front and riding on these transportation vehicles. And so it's important that we do that immediately. There's some great comments coming here as well. Curtis says the government are giving clear direction. That's why people are scared. Again, that is the problem. It's a mixed message on a regular basis. We don't get a clear direction and there's no leadership from the front. As that taxi driver said in that clip or later, he said they need to lead by example. And that's actually not what's happening out there. Angela says our mayor and council is still pushing the fear narrative. I agree, that's all I get. Let's be scared, let's be scared, let's be scared. And I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know if that justifies the decisions they made in the past 6 months, some of which were incorrect. But it's not what we need now. We need a reset, and we need to look at how we can build this economy going forward. And so look, I always tell people, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. It's what I tell all my students in the academy. It's what I tell the team here at London Real, and I'm going to do the same for you. And so this is what I propose, effective immediately for the rest of 2020, is this. We need to slash all TfL, that means bus and tube fares, down to zero. And that way we can get people coming to London for free. So they can come in and feel like they can go in and spend and come to work. Those dollars and pounds or those pounds add up over time. The next thing I propose us doing is removing the congestion charge entirely for the remainder of 2020. Now that same taxi driver last night, he said, did you realize that the congestion charge now is 24/7 and on weekends? He said, so now nobody from outside London has any motivation to come in and spend money at restaurants or go out at night. Nobody has any motivation to come in on the weekends and spend money in our retail establishments and promote business. This is ridiculous. This is a regressive way of taxing people. It hurts the economy. We need to remove all that, get people back in town, and really allow people to come to London for free. That's what we need. Get people to come to London for free and to start spending. So again, let's get them on the transport so they feel like they can get on these transportation pieces and again, not feel fear. We also need to get these roads cleared. There is no point in having these COVID barriers out there. There is no science behind it, but nobody wants to step up and make that decision. We need to get to the science and say, is there really a need to go from 3 meters of pavement to 6 meters of pavement for a city that's at 50% capacity? Does that make any sense? While it hurts the economy, hurts our taxi drivers, hurts our retail establishments, hurts businesses from going on in London, meetings taking places as well. So that's what I propose. I think we should really look into this, and that's my thoughts on how we can stimulate the economy. Again, some great questions coming in here right now, and I want to move on to my final point, which is this. We need to get London back to school. School is an incredibly important part of the structure of a community. It really is. It's one of those basic, fundamental pillars of a community is school. And it's not just for the children, and I'll get to that, but it's for the parents. It's so the parents can actually have the freedom to be adults. And that means having the freedom to go work, having the freedom to have their time for their physical fitness, for their mental health, and even for their recreation. And look, my wife can be the first one to tell you, having kids at home and not having an option of daycare over the past 6 months has been extremely challenging. It's been really hard to do. And we saw with the key workers here in London, it was a real question early on that if you close schools, it was going to mean there weren't going to be enough nurses and doctors and firemen and women and police officers to even make this city function. So that's the first level. The second level is the children. You know, this has been a very, very difficult time for children. You know, they are being told to not run up to strangers. They're being asked to wear face masks. You know, my 4-year-old son was asked by an airline stewardess to put a mask on. You know, I can barely get him to eat his breakfast or go to school. That's the last thing he wants to do, you know, and they're traumatized by this lack of communication, asking them to do strange things and also isolating them. You know, children need to be around social communities. It's the fabric of what's happening. It's so important to get these kids back to school. And yet there's so much fear out there for why people aren't doing it. And so, you know, just to let you know, a little personal note, I took my son Caden for his first day of school this week on Monday. It was a big moment. It was a little scary. And I think we got a picture here of me and my wife taking him to school. He was really excited. This is before we got to the school. When he got in there, he freaked out a little bit because there was so many new people. And again, everybody was wearing masks and gloves and stuff. But actually, on his second day, we walked him there, and we thought there was going to be a bunch of problems. And he said, bye, and he walked right in. And I took him this morning, and he forgot to even say goodbye to me. He's loving being at school. Even though it's strangers and a strange place, he just loves it because his brain is working. He's got all this new vocabulary, these new social habits, these new people. And now Mom, for the first time ever, has got time to spend with our second son and get some quality time with him. It's changed everything about our day, and it's really the way forward. Unfortunately, the numbers tell us something very, very different right now. And I went in and looked at some of the statistics, and some of the numbers I found was shocking about how parents feel about getting their kids back to school. And I brought a few of those numbers here, again, because I'm a person that believes in data. I believe in the science, and science determines policy, not whims, not something to cover yourself politically or to cover something you did in the past. I look at the science, and when I looked into it, I really looked at the confidence sentiment about parents when they're asking about sending their kids back to school. And these numbers are going to shock you. 1 in 5 parents in the UK are still unsure if they should be sending their children back to school. But it gets worse. 88% say they would risk a fine to keep their kids at home. They would risk losing money in one of the hardest economic times ever because they're still scared of putting their kids to school. It gets more. 45% of the parents said it's still too soon to think about the children, and 25% are still worried about the health risk of their children. And again, it comes down to the fundamentals. We overdid the campaign of fear, and this has been a disproportionate response to the health concerns, the health crisis. That's what it is. And again, there is no science-based decision-making happening right now. That's not what's happening right now. We are seeing decisions being made and fears that aren't based on the science, and this comes down to a complete lack of leadership from our government, a lack of communication, and inconsistent messaging constantly. And that needs to stop. And so again, my solution is this. We need to educate the public on the actual science, that it is safe for these children to go back to school, that it is safe and important to have them back in school for the structure of this. And I want to get London back to 100% attendance. That's my goal. All children back to school, which is going to help London get back to work. This is what we need. We need people to get comfortable with it. We need to show leadership. We need to show the science that backs this up. And we need to make the parents really feel that this is the best decision, and I know it is. And that's the decision I made as a parent this week. My teenage daughter also went back to school this week, and she's loving it. You know, she really needed that structure. She really needed that social ability. Like I said, it's going to be hard to get Caden not to go to school on Saturday because he loves it so much. Again, the parent structure is back. The teachers are working. You know, the teachers there are so happy to be there. You can just tell. They were like, wow, we didn't even know if we'd ever be back to school. Everyone's bringing their A game. They're functioning. They're getting paid now. They're going to spend money. They're coming back into London. This is all part of the process. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. You have to get London back to work, which means the workers have to come back into this city. And I read a statistic that 42% of the income generated in London comes from the workers of London, not from a tourist. Not from a company spending money here. It comes from people being in the city limits and spending their money. And that only happens when we get these workers back. So let's get these top 25 global banks and law firms. Let's get 50% of the staff back by the end of the month. Yeah, that gives you 3 weeks. JP Morgan is going to do it even sooner. Why can't we do it? There would be a massive spike in the economy here. Next, I want to drop all tube and bus fares down to zero and completely put a moratorium on the congestion charge until the end of the year. Let's really get this economy back. Let's see Q4 numbers that are back at least within 5 or 10% of the numbers last year. This means we're back on this recovery. And finally, we've got to get 100% of our kids back in school. That is the lifeblood of the family structure, of the community structure. It also is going to kickstart our GDP in a massive way. So those are my thoughts. I would love to get your thoughts. And again, I don't claim to know the solutions. I'm not a politician, but I am an informed, intelligent adult. And I'm tired of people telling me things and trying to run my city in a way that's irresponsible, it's ill-informed, and quite frankly, it's doing massive damage, not only to people's economic health, to their mental health, to our children's health. And I'm just not going to put up with it anymore. So I want to have these conversations. I'm really looking for ideas. I'm looking to collaborate with the right individuals and bring in the experts that can find these solutions. And I want to present these ideas to all of you out there and get your feedback as well. And let's send our leaders these messages of what needs to change. This is so important. So again, leave your comments below and tell me, what is your city doing? Maybe you have an idea that you're doing it better in your city and we can learn from you. What are you struggling with as an entrepreneur, as a business owner? What are you struggling with in transport? What are you struggling with as a parent? I want to have these conversations with you. And I'm going to be having more of these conversations over the next 4 weeks. I'm going to go out and I'm going to speak to community leaders. I'm going to speak with more business owners, from the black cab drivers to the shop owners, to even companies in the city where I used to work at, the JP Morgans and the Goldman Sachses and the NatWests of the world. I want to speak with our tourism chiefs. I want to speak with our health workers. I want to speak with our first responders in the fire department and the police department. I want to speak with any group out there that can help me find this solution, that wants to show leadership. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. We need to be led by example. We need people on the front line showing us what to do, not telling us what to do. And again, not blaming people. I don't have a lot of time for victims here at London Real. I don't in the Academy, and I don't for our politicians. I don't need another politician complaining about why they can't take action. I need them to take action, show some leadership, and show us the way. And look, I love London. I'm going to be here for a long time. I love it so much. I named my show London Real after London. And it's time to have these conversations. And I honestly think that if we pool our resources, and again, find some science-based, fact-driven ways to determine policies, we can bounce out of this recession. We can bounce out of this pandemic. We can find real solutions and be a global leader in what we were doing. I honestly believe that if we put our heads to this for the next 6 months, we could be leading and showing places like Los Angeles and Tokyo and New York City and Hong Kong and Singapore and Paris and Frankfurt. We could be leading the way when it comes to how we can run our cities and how we can run our economies and how we can run our healthcare. And that's what I'm looking to do. So I'm super excited. Again, if you want to come to me and have a conversation, email me at hello@londonreal.tv and tell me what's the concern you're having, what is the challenge you're having out there, because I want to hear from you and I want to speak from you. If you want me to come talk to you or you want to come into the studio and talk to me, I'd love to hear from you as well. So thank you for your thoughts. I really appreciate that. Leave me your comments below and let me know what your challenges are. I want to talk about new things every week, and hopefully the people in power are listening and they can take some nuggets here. Again, this is not about ego. You know, it doesn't have to be your idea or my idea. I just want the best idea because I want the best solution for the people. I'm a parent in this city. I'm a business owner in this city. You know, I have friends and family in this city. I am vested into the people's good of London, and I want to see us win. You know, we're the best city in the world. Let's start acting like it is what we want. And let's make London great again. So on that note, just thanking you all so much. I appreciate you on Real Deal. We'll be back next week to talk about more important issues and how we can all find better solutions together. Until then, I will see you then.
At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today.